Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another mildly interesting video. A hurricane has just passed us, winter is coming, you know what that means. You'll come later, but there's also Overload in the air. According to Wikipedia, Overload is considered to be the biggest anime convention in New Zealand. Armageddon may be bigger, but that is general pop culture. It didn't stop pop culture from leaking its way into this anime convention though. I ended up seeing something I believe to be Call of Duty cosplays. That's right, I was in Overload for the first time. I wanted to see what it was all about, what goes on in this massive anime convention, which according to Wikipedia brought in 8,000 people last year, and I'm curious to see the numbers for this year. So, I spent $40 for a 2-day ticket and waited for the day of reckoning, that being... I arrived just as it started at 10 AM and I started walking around the stalls, all located in the cloud. I knew I wanted to focus on the main stage events, the ones with the exclusive guests, like Castle Swimmer creator Wendy Martin and voice actor for Toru from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Yuki Kuwahara. But the first event would start at 11, so that was plenty of time for me. Now, there were way too many stalls for me to count, but if I'm not mistaken, according to the map, there were more than 200 stalls in this event alone. Those were just the artist stalls. I ended up not getting anything that day, and my fate may be to only return from Overload with the free booklets that they give out to the people there. There was also a maid cafe at the end of the cloud, but I'm not going to cover that because I didn't go in there, but here it is, as proof that it exists. So once I was done looking around, I went to Shed 10, where all the exclusive events are. You had art showcases for the special artists coming to this year's Overload. Aki Bright, Wendy Martin, Kaoru Mori, Aki Irie, and Ilya Kuchino. Yosuke, a Singaporean cosplayer, had her stall near the stage where you could buy her merch and get autographs. And Shed 10 was where I stayed for most of my time in Overload. This is also the same place where I saw 2 stalls from 2 clubs from the University of Auckland. One from the Anime and Manga Club, and one from the Game Developers Guild. The GDG had a game where you ran over babies with a speeding car with beer as multipliers, and it was hilarious, even if I only scored around 300 points before running out of time. Right next to the GDG was a Miku wall, where you could draw your own Hatsune Miku on the wall, so that's where to get the name, or leave a message. This was my overall contribution. Anyway, another thing that I want to highlight are open stages, where some cosplayers would come out on stage and perform bits for the audience, mostly dance routines. These would happen in between of the exclusive events on stage. Now, some of them came in groups resembling idol groups and performed a couple of songs, others sang them either in English or Japanese. And it was pretty nice seeing everyone so enthusiastic about this. Now, I'm not going to document them because I was mostly walking around at the time, looking for anything else that I could have missed during the event. And I did find way more things. For example, a truck from the Auckland libraries filled with manga. Yes, somehow the local board is one of the sponsors of this event, and they brought some manga from their libraries for us to read. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that they had some volumes of Cardcaptor Sakura and Sailor Moon. I almost thought those had become lost media with how rarely I see those shows in pop culture. Don't shoot the messenger. But there was also a place where you could try on yukatas and try some calligraphy. That was also where the autograph booth was for the special guest, which, by the way, ran right in front of the only toilets in Shed 10. I ended up going to the cloud to pee whenever I needed to. Now, back at the cloud, there was also a zone with anime-based cars with anime characters, and related imagery plastered all over them. And I don't know if they were for showcasing, or if you could actually buy them. But that was enough walking around, and I got back to Shed 10 just in time to catch the first events of Overload 2025. Considering that this is a long event spanning many seconds, we're gonna need a reliable food source. So I've decided to rate each event based on potato chips. And we're gonna start things off with... We start things off with an extremely powerful and impactful taiko drum performance from Tamashi Taiko drummers. Watching them, you can see the synchronization and coordination between each member so that every impactful hit arrives at the same time to maximize said impact. There's almost a melody of sorts that can be heard in the drums. Even with some hiccups in the performances, they were able to quickly get back on their feet and continue as if nothing had happened. I would say the lady at the bottom of the stage had the hardest job of them all, alternating between 2 different drums and also acting as a metronome for the rest of the performers on stage where everyone's eyes is focused on them. And unlike those stage performers where they can swap out performers for others for different performances, she was pretty much stuck there with no one to replace her. And that was the most impressive part for me. It did drag on a bit as they got to the 4th performance, but the power and the precision was still there. And it's a very strong and impressive opening to Overload 2025. This Q&A was surprisingly good. Going to the Q&As in general, I was expecting them to be just standard back and forth between the interviewer and the special guest. But instead, Aki opened up with a short guess the character I'm drawing game, and I answered Tomie for Gandalf. I know, I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I'm in the land where they use kiwis as a currency. Now, I had bought a notebook to jot down any interesting things that I had learned from these sessions, as well as my overall thoughts on the event. I ended up filling a lot more pages than I expected, and it was really interesting seeing how he comes up with characters, and a lot of technical details were revealed, like the differences between drawing in black and white and in color regarding the time taken and the overall quality. And I had learned quite a lot from this session and was engaging enough that I didn't feel bored through it. Just when I thought it was starting to drag out, the event was over. Perfect length for me. I don't know if I'm signing my death certificate from saying this, but the one time that I read Castle Swimmer, it was just the first chapter, and then I got bored and then moved on to sci-fi. It just wasn't my thing. But a lot of people in the audience seem to be really into that webtoon. Half the audience questions started with some variation of, oh my gosh, I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of Castle Swimmer. So she definitely seemed like a big deal, and I really love the enthusiasm involved. I feel like this Q&A attracted more people than Aki Brights did. Now, I missed the first 20 minutes of this Q&A for reasons, but I did manage to arrive in time for the audience Q&A, and it was, I'll say, fairly basics, although the topics were far from that. It's a fairly interesting mind to get into, making comics for Lion Webtoon within endless canvas space. I too ended up learning quite a bit from this event, chief among which she identifies as a crab. This was unique in that no photos or videos were allowed during this Q&A session, but what I will say is that Yuki Kurohawa was surprisingly short. Like, shorter than I expected. And I think it's okay to describe that because her face is already on my anime list, it's already online. Anyways, she was a joy to watch with her infectious smile and voice, and a lot of people turned up to see her. This is Toru from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, who is basically the epitome of chaotic wholesomeness. She also gave us some insight into what it's like to work in the voice acting industry, and she reminded everyone that she knows her job when she voiced Overload's mascot, Nindoro, with some pre-written voice lines. The change in her normal voice to her Nindoro voice was quite shocking, and it served as a good reminder that she is great at her job. It felt like it was an anime character talking to us in the flesh. So overall, this was very fun and interesting, although most of the time was spent on the regular Q&A rather than the audience Q&A. Well, to be fair, the questions that the presenter asked were still interesting. Now, coming from the University of Auckland's Anime and Manga Club, or the UOA AMC, this was easily the best part of Sunday. I was expecting a Kahoot type of situation and was pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't. Now, to be fair, the site might crash due to the sheer load. I also still can't believe they're responsible for this. There were 3 stages, the first being True or False. It covered popular anime like Spy X Family and The Apothecary Diaries, alongside some lesser-known anime like Dr. Stone. For legal reasons, that's a joke. I got eliminated after question 7. The second stage involved opinions of audience. The remaining people would choose between 2 opinions on opinion-based questions like who would win, Goku or Saitama, so that was what the blackboard was for their stall. The remaining people would come up on stage and write their choices, and then the club would take the audience's opinions on the answer. Now, Goku won, obviously. Whoever picked the popular opinion would step forward. That's the name of the game! And whoever didn't would stay. The game went on for a while until there were only 4 people left. Then those 4 people went down to the third stage, categories, where the players were given a category to put down an anime title. The host would then go around and ask random audience members for the anime titles, and the players needed to have different titles from each other and from the ones that the audience throwed out. So it was pretty exciting on the audience's end, because you get to decide if one player gets to stay alive during the final 3 or not, with just one answer of yours. This is a level of audience participation that I hadn't seen in a long time, and it became fun on all fronts, whether you were eliminated or still in the game, because you got to choose how the game would proceed, even if you were eliminated. Now, overall, this was easily the best part of Sunday. The games were novel and fun and kept people active, and the audience participation aspect as the game went on was very genius. I hadn't seen anything like that before, or maybe I just don't watch enough game shows. And thus begins the fashion show. The cosplay parade went by very quickly. If I'm not mistaken, it only took around 15 minutes. Just a quick flyby of some of the people showcasing their cosplays for Overload, but that just felt like a preview for the last big thing on Sunday, Now, I missed pretty much all the names of the cosplayers in this competition, so I'm not going to announce who won which prize. Now, the way that it worked was that the competitors would enter the stage and Sparky Cosplays, who was the host, would tell us which character they were in the process of making that cosplay. Some of them were mind-boggling. We're talking over 20 hours of work done for just one aspect of the cosplay for some of these people. It was very impressive seeing all this effort being put into the cosplays, and the fruits of their labor definitely shine through that. But the number of people enrolled in this competition meant that it started to drag a bit. Now, there's not much that we can really do about that to really highlight the hard work that these people have put in to become their favorite characters. Now, speaking of favorite characters, there were 3 Sailor Moon cosplays: Queen Serenity, Black Lady, and I'm not going to announce the full name because that could be a spoiler, and Sailor Moon herself, who wowed the audience with a skit where she became the utter inner senshi through a suitcase on stage. Speaking of skits, some of these cosplayers had skits to go along with the cosplay where they would perform some bits. And every time Sparky announced the cosplayer would be doing a skit, the audience would just erupt in cheers. My 2 favorites were Kachina from Genshin Impact and Victor from Yuri on Ice. The former was a hilarious spoof of Philomena Kong complete with a rickroll, and the latter was an extremely entertaining, with great sound mixing and banter between Yuri and Victor through a video call format. Now, reading the FAQ, all audio needs to be pre-recorded, no live audio allowed, but it was impressive that I genuinely thought that Victor was speaking on stage and that it wasn't a pre-recorded conversation, at least on his part. But anyways, the winners, and at that point I had already forgotten which character was which beside the Sailor Moon ones because I had watched that show, which, okay, just to reboot, which was something, and it didn't even matter because none of them won. There were 3 judges' choices and a third, second, and first place. Now, after some investigation, I was able to find 2 of those judges' winners on Instagram. Silence and Teal as Victor from Yuri on Ice, and Cosmic Bat as Coco from Witch Hat Atelier. And there was an overall winner as well, best costume and skin. And I think the trainer from Pokemon XY won. I think her partner's name was Sylvia. Regardless, congratulations to all the winners of the cosplay competition. Also, Sparky reminded me a lot of Effie from the Hunger Games.
I finished 15 minutes early. This is thank you everyone. Thank you guys. We hope to see you next year. We hope you've had a fun time. Thank you. Bye!
And with that, Saturday came to a close. By then, the sky was dark and people were closing up shop and ready to head home and relax. I was too. This was so much more fun and interesting than I expected. The Q&As were genuinely interesting, and the fact that they got so many people from all over the world, Japan included, because this is an anime convention, was impressive. The anime trivia game was fun, and it was amazing seeing the skill and the time these cosplayers were willing to go through to become their favorite characters, all highlighted on stage. And this event was so much more than I expected it to be. Oh, what's that? There's still the next day. So Overload runs until Sunday, so I decided to cover Sunday as well. It was raining quite hard when I woke up, and the rain was still going on as the first people walked in, and was still going on as it was closing down as well. There were also notably fewer cosplayers today than yesterday, and I'm guessing that's because the cosplay competition is on Saturday, but there was also still a cosplay parade on Sunday nights, just like Saturday. After some more looking around the cloud, I ended up caving in and bought a Sailor Moon poster from St. Eve in Road A. It caught my attention from when I walked into the cloud for the first time and continued to keep my attention whenever I passed by them. Ended up costing $12, but the quality is very nice and it actually reminds me of an old Pulp Fiction magazine. Maybe I should make a review about that. But we still have more events to go through, so we're gonna start things off with... Now, like Saturday, we also kicked things off with a musical performance, this time brought to us by the University of Auckland's Anime and Manga Club with DJ Sleepy J. Now, truth be told, DJ isn't really my thing, and the opening felt quite weak. I was pretty much not interested at the beginning. However, as the performance went on, it became more and more cohesive and stronger, and almost at the end, 4 people were waving light sticks to the beat. And I feel like that weak opening shows just how hard DJ can be. You need to be able to mix multiple songs into one and make it not just sound cohesive, but also great for 30 minutes. That's right, the DJ went on for 30 minutes straight, and that's pretty impressive in my opinion, but I don't really have a lot else to say about this. Now, no photos or videos were allowed in this event, just like the Yuki Kurohara one, which was quite surprising. And considering I couldn't really find anything about them regarding their faces online, I'm gonna assume that this is just to keep them anonymous. What was also surprising was that this event went on for an hour and a half. I was expecting to be bored by the end of it, but the fact that these were 2 different mangakas making 2 different long-running mangas kept my interest throughout the whole way. I mean, you've got Karimori with A Bright Story, and Aki Irie with Go With the Clouds North by Northwest. Both are very, very different. A Bright Story is set in Central Asia with many Mongolian references, and North by Northwest is a detective story set in Iceland. The fact that there were 2 different mangakas on stage meant that I didn't get bored. If I got bored with one mangaka, I could just simply listen to the other one, or just focus on the other one more. As a result, the hour and a half duration flew by like a breeze, and you're always learning something new because these are 2 very different mangas coming from 2 different minds. So you're always learning something new in that hour and a half. It just flew by like a breeze. Now, fortunately, photos and videos were allowed in this event. Unfortunately, there were no audience questions. I was constantly checking the time, thinking, surely we've got to be starting the audience questions now, right? Or at least, that's what I thought I would be thinking. But while you're in there, Yosuke's story is very interesting as she navigates through the world of cosplay in Southeast Asia. We also get to see her dedication on hand with her story of traveling to Indonesia just for an Al Haitham photo shoot. It's Bali. It's always Bali, because it's not like there's 17,000 more islands in Indonesia. Why don't you try visiting Bandung or Surabaya for a change? We're pretty big too. You want islands? Go to Maluku, then maybe stop by Palu or something. But short Indonesia rant aside, she also shared her YouTube channel / podcast Gossip or Cosplay Gossip. But even more interesting than that was an event called Cosset. The way I take it, you sell your old cosplays there, and other people can buy them for cheap. The aim is to make cosplaying cheaper and more accessible, which, now that I think about it, wasn't really a thing back in Southeast Asia. I don't know, I've been living in Indonesia for almost my whole life, and I didn't really see that. Cosset might actually be the first of its kind. Now the other explanation would be that I've been living under a rock regarding all this stuff, and you would be right too. While her stories are interesting and cover a lot of ground, I would have loved to see some audience participation involved in this, and truth be told, I'm not that into cosplaying, it's just a personal taste of mine, but her stories are very interesting and cover so much about the world of cosplay that at a certain point, I didn't mind that we weren't going to have any audience questions. Now, once again, no photos or videos were allowed in this event, and once again, I also couldn't really find his face online, so I'm gonna assume that this is just to keep him anonymous as well. Anyways, this is where it starts to get boring. I found myself scrolling through my phone more than I expected to. Maybe it's because I'm really not that familiar with his work. Now, to be fair, I didn't know who Aki Bright was back then, but I recognized some of his artwork when I saw it in the flesh. I also did watch Cyberpunk Edge Runner, so I felt like I should have been more interested, especially because he directed the music video Let You Down, which is the ending theme to that anime. And on top of that, his situation was very interesting. He is a Russian working deep in the anime industry. That is a very interesting thing to explore, which they did. But after that, this specialty of his started to wear off because we already covered the fact that he is a Russian working deep in the anime industry. Everything else kind of felt fairly standard. We've already covered artists before with Aki Bright and to an extent Wendy Martin and the Kari Mori and Aki Irie duo. So what else could there be to explore besides the fact that he is a Russian working in the anime industry? At least with Kari Mori and Aki Irie, they're making long-running manga, so it's more interesting to see their story side, how they plan out everything and how they like wrap up storylines and whether they start with the end in mind or they just write it as they go. There was also Wendy Martin as well, but she was the second guest of the entire event, so it kind of felt more fresh in my mind. Maybe I'm just more interested in the side of writing stories rather than drawing or illustrating, but anyways, he kind of felt boring to me by the end. There were two more competitions in this year's Overload, the first being an art competition where you get to make a hero to ward off bug monsters. That's the general gist I got. We got a whole load of different artists drawing different characters. Lena and Grin reminded me of her friend's art style, but my favorite one was personally Wanjiao. But who actually won? While being judged by Aki Irie, here were the winners. The third place went to Tanvir Kok with the character of Damien Essos. Second place went to Sarah Yang with the character of Chen. First place went to Oscar Fang with the character of Ari. This easily turned out to be the best part of Sunday. I had no idea what to expect going into this event, but it turned out to be a game show. A highly chaotic game show. See, Captain Patch repairs cosplay items free of charge they had installed in the event, and this game show is all about repairing broken cosplay items with a twist. Each team can get 2 different items and various cards to either boost them or sabotage the other team. And I'm guessing they saw the political landscape of 2025 and decided that 2 can play the same game, because this year introduced Australia versus New Zealand, 2 cosplayers for each nation, although Australia had 3 players with 2 of them being from Illustrious, a sponsor of the event. So as a compromise, only one member of the Illustrious duo could be on stage at any given moment, but they could swap out freely. Now, after some research on Instagram, I found the contestant names I didn't write down the first time around. Team New Zealand had Sparky Cosplays and Peridottle, and Team Australia had Al Damone and Illustrious Models. It was just 40 minutes of pure chaos, and I couldn't even look away. And it turns out they weren't even keeping score because at the end they asked an audience member who should win. And by threatening a small doll of Nindoro, New Zealand won.
So you know Overload well, and you know the Overload mascot well, dear sweet person. So let's keep this in mind. He comes with lashes. Let's keep this special gift just for you in mind when you make your vote, okay? One of a kind.
Given what we've seen here today,
And the excellence and skills from the New
gotta
Zealand
be
team.
Team New Zealand.
Let's get you your bits of check. Here you go. Here's okay, no. There's some check pieces. You can assemble yourself. We'll get you
Once again, this was easily the best part of Sunday for me. Chloe Constable's photo was my favorite, and I don't really know why. Maybe it was the cosplay itself, because it had a bit of an old, rugged look to it. So the judge's recommendation went to David Fu, who I remember was a photo of Beidou from Genshin Impact taken over a rocky beach with crashing waves in the background. Third place went to Eileen Zheng. Second place went to Yumi L. And if I'm not mistaken, first place went to Sutiporn K, with a photo of a gun girl lying on the grass. This one was just a quick flyby of more cosplayers, just like the one yesterday, but there was no competition to follow it. And with that, Sunday and thus Overload 2025 came to a close. Now, while Sunday was fun, it wasn't as fun as Saturday. Maybe it was because the magic happened on Saturday when you have just walked in and you have no idea what is going to happen. Especially so because this was my first time in Overload and I hadn't actually been to a single anime convention beforehand. So Overload was my first time in any sort of anime convention. And no, I've been living under a rock with this. Overload was surprisingly fun. I thought most of the fun would come around from walking around the artist stalls in the cloud, but the special guest interviews and Shed 10 were so interesting that that's where I stayed for most of the time. You really get a great overview of the world of anime and manga from the many people working in the industry. That's not to say the cloud was disappointing. Far from it. You can see so many artists who love what they do and are now able to make money out of their work. And it's not just found in the stalls. You have cosplayers all over the world who have given so much time and energy to become their favorite characters, which I can't imagine myself doing, but these people did it regardless and I commend them for it. I thought I had essentially thrown away $40 and was pleasantly surprised to come up with so much more knowledge of the anime and manga industry and a further $12 taken out of my pocket. But at least I got a pretty cool poster to put up on my wall. Or at least once I take a further $4 to buy out the blue tie needed to stick it on my wall. When did she get up there?